Welcome. Welcome everybody to today's webinar. Our webinar today is how and why to make a successful move to Madeira. And today is Wednesday, the 24th of January. We're transmitting from London where it's grey outside. So we're in a moment going to transport ourselves to Madeira for reasons I'll explain to you in a minute. But welcome everybody. Everybody has now signed in for today's webinar. You're most welcome. And we're looking forward to telling you more about Portugal, about Madeira, and about the different aspects of the tax and the visas that you have indicated that you want to know. Now, some of you will know who I am already. I'm Christina Hipsley from the Portuguese Chamber of Commerce here in the UK. And every year we organise the Moving to Portugal shows and seminars. Some of you will be familiar with them. In fact, our next show is on Thursday, the 14th of March, 2024, so 7 weeks away. And if you'd like to come along, because you can meet some of our other chamber members, lots of our exhibitors, and you'll hear lots of very topical seminars as well. Go and have a look at our website, movingtoportugal.org.uk, and you can register to come along to the event, which is in central London on the 14th of March, 2024. Now, just to let you guys know, you can see everything on here, what the webinar will be about, the how and why of a successful relocation to Portugal. And the webinar will be around 45 minutes long. 25 minutes of slides from our two speakers, and then we'll take questions at the end. So do put your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom here or in the chat box, and we will try and answer them all at the end of the webinar. And the other thing to tell you is that all presentations will be sent to you shortly after the webinar ends, so don't worry too much about taking notes. You're going to get all the slides, don't worry. Now, hopefully this is going to be an insightful webinar for you all. Everything we discuss here today is applicable to all of Portugal, okay? But it just so happens that since our guests, John Mather and Jessie Serrão from Émigré EU, are based in Madeira, we will be talking as well about the unique benefits and lifestyle of the beautiful island of Madeira. In particularly, we'll tell you a little bit about the concept of renting a property before you buy a property to give you an idea of testing what it's like to live in Portugal. Secondly, we'll tell you a little bit about the advantages and the pitfalls of buying a property that's already being built or that hasn't been built yet. There are some there are some cost benefits to that. We will also be talking to you about the different visa options in Portugal. There is the D7, the D2, and several other residential visa options, i.e. you're going to go and live in Portugal, move your tax residence there. And we will also tell you a bit about what's called the Golden Visa. You'll have heard about this, which also gives you residency in Portugal, but you don't actually have to be there for 6 or 8 months a year. Okay, so we'll tell you more about that. But a word about our two speakers today. Our two speakers are our chamber members, John Mather and Jessie Serrão from Émigré EU, who are based in the capital of Madeira Island, which is called Funchal. And Émigré are specialists in Portuguese visas and the whole relocation process, the whole reasons why you might move from the UK to Portugal and everything you need to know about before you do that. And they're based in Funchal, as I said, in Madeira. And one of our speakers, as you can see, is John Mather. Now, he's the CEO of Émigré, and later in the webinar, he's going to be explaining how the costs of living compare between the UK and Portugal. And he'll also be talking about taxes, what sort of taxes you'll pay in Portugal and what sort of taxes, how that compares to the UK. He'll also talk about why that might benefit your pension, key area. And he'll go through the different visas, especially the practicalities of the different residential visas. But before we get to John, I'd like to introduce John's colleague, Jessie Serrão, who will be talking to us about Madeira now, some of the benefits of Madeira and the kinds of properties you can expect to find there if you don't know it already. Many of you will know Madeira well already, I'm sure. Next slide, please. Now, Jessie, this dramatic photograph is one of many reasons why people love Madeira. It's just wonderful. Tell us a little bit about the unique features of Madeira. Why? I mean, you were born there. You're clearly you love it. Tell us a little bit about why Madeira is so special.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the invite. So, why Madeira? And my question is next, why not? So, Madeira is the pearl of the Atlantic, and Madeira has won for 9 years in a row as the leading destination island of the world. So, I think these reasons are already very good to consider moving here. But from now on,
this is Câmara de Lobos, isn't it?
This is Câmara de Lobos. Yes,
which is your hometown.
It's my town. It's just near Funchal. Very lovely, very attractive. So I will be showing you some pictures of the island and explaining you why it's so attractive.
And for those of us older than Jessie, many will know that Winston Churchill was a regular visitor to Funchal and Madeira.
There.
Câmara de Lobos was where he painted. So it will be
from this perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Next. So Madeira has very good infrastructures. It has evolved along the years. On the top pictures, you can see some of the old roads that are still possible to drive around, and you can have beautiful views. But these roads can be a bit steep and a bit not so safe. So that's why Madeira has improved a lot in that aspect, building new roads, as you can see in the bottom, lots of tunnels. We have about 140 tunnels all over the island, which makes it faster and safer to drive around. Even if you are not living in Funchal, it's quite fast to ride around the island. Next. The food in the island is great. You can see some examples here. There's the traditional espetada, which is simple beef on a skew, but it has garlic, bay leaf, so it gives a very good flavor. Everyone needs to try when you come here. There's a lot of fish, a lot of fruits and vegetables. The fruits and the vegetables, they have a very rich flavor because the island is volcanic. The soil is very fertile. So everything has the original taste that it should have. So if you buy a property here with a small piece of land, everything you grow, it will grow. It will grow. Okay. And we also have wine. The wine is very good. My own family, we produce some wine, not to sell to like bottles, like on the picture, but for our own family and some neighbors. But Madeira wine is worldwide known. For example, the Independence Day in America was toasted with Madeira wine. So it's very popular and very good. Next. The climate is one of the reasons why people choose Madeira. It's a mild kind of climate. Funchal has the most moderate temperature all over the year, about 20 degrees. For example, today is 20 degrees in Funchal. So typical winter day on the island. It can also rain, of course, like you can see on the right picture, but it's not weeks and weeks of rain. It does rain, it's good for the island and for the agriculture, but it's not full weeks of rain. We can also have some snow. You can see in the bottom picture, but it's in the highest mountains. For example, that's the third highest peak from Madeira at about 1,800 meters from sea level. So don't worry, you won't have snow at your doorstep. It doesn't happen here in Madeira. It's more up in the highest mountains. And it's not every year. So let's see how it goes this year. And also the last picture, that's in the north. Although the north can have 2 to 4 degrees less compared to the south side, it's still very good. The temperatures are very good. It rains more. That's why it's more green. And it also keeps the original forest from Madeira alive. Next. And for those who say that Madeira is not a good beach destination, I think they are completely wrong. When I want to go to the beach, I don't travel to other places. I stay in Madeira because, for example, you have the first picture. It's a beach with a mixture of black and gold sandy beach. On the right side, it's a simple black sand beach on the north side of Madeira. We have the typical pebble rock beach, not the most comfortable, but it can give you a free massage, let's say like that. We have this one in the middle. It's an introduced type of beach. We imported some sand from Morocco to have some gold sand beach on the island. And we also have the volcanic pools like you can see on the last picture. But if you don't think it's enough, next, we have Porto Santo. Porto Santo is about 40 kilometers away from Madeira. You can get on that ferry, takes about 2.5 hours to get there, and you can spend the day in that beautiful beach that you can see on the pictures. Last year, Porto Santo won as the best beach in Europe. So if this is not good reasons to come as a beach destination to Madeira, I don't know what it is. But it also has some hotels in Porto Santo, a golf court, some hikes. So it's not just for the beach that you can visit Porto Santo. Next. Okay. We also have good culture. In fact, we have an orchestra, the Madeira Classical Orchestra, and it's and this weekend, the 60th anniversary, and they're making a concert, which the tickets are already sold out. So a lot of people are gonna attend this event. We have the Flower Festival, which is in May. It's a full month of activities, and there's a day with a parade, so it's very nice and attracts a lot of people. The New Year's Eve, it's simply amazing. I don't want to spend the New Year's Eve elsewhere. I always want to spend here. It's really fantastic. The fireworks, they are all over the bay. And the last one, you can see a church with some typical decorations. It's called the Arraiais. It's normally it's religious kinds of festivals that we do, but we also celebrate like the fruits and the vegetables. We really like to party. We are really happy people, so we always find a reason to celebrate. For example, we even do the Sweet Chestnut Festival. So if you go to the Duns Valley in the Sweet Chestnut Festival, you can try a lot of things made of sweet chestnut. So that's our kind of activities. Next. Talking about activities, there are some sports, some adventurous things that you can do all over the island. Diving, paragliding, hiking. That's one of the most popular hikes on the island between the highest peaks. Canyoning, which is like going down the streams using some ropes and jumping down for the most adventurous ones, of course. Mountain biking, road cycling, for example, you can ride in the roads of Madeira. And that's me on that picture. So it's actually true. You can actually cycle here. And golf. There's 3 golf courts on the island, and they're currently planning to build a 4th one. So, and there's other activities, tennis, paddle surf, many other things that you can do. Next. And also the Madeira, talking about infrastructure again, Madeira is currently building a new hospital. So this hospital, it's costing 36.5 million euros. Brussels, they have been very generous with us, which is very good. Also with the roads, all the infrastructures all over the island. So we are very grateful for that because that is really helping our island to improve. And in the bottom, you can see just a picture in Funchal of people walking around. The island is very safe. You can have a very good lifestyle here, very simple. People are very friendly. So it's very nice to just retire here and live a good and simple kind of life. Next. So there are some places that you can buy a property in Madeira. The most common one is Funchal, which is the capital, but Madeira has 2,500 people living on the island and
250,000.
250,000, I'm sorry. Thank you. Yeah. 250,000, and about 100,000 are living in Funchal. So the majority are concentrated in Funchal, but there are many other places all over the island. For example, Émigré Lda, as we saw before, where I come from. Then we have Ponta do Sol and Calheta. These two places, they are considered the sunniest areas of Madeira. That one, the last one, is Prazeres. That one is also in Calheta. But the reason why I'm showing you this place, it's because although it's at 500 meters from sea level, it's very flat, very green. And so in this place, you can have a more kind of a rural kind of life, but big plots of land to cultivate. The people are very friendly. So it's a more kind of a peaceful kind of life. And these two pictures on the top, it's now the north side. It's a more dramatic scenery, bit more steep, and it's more green, but it's up to everyone to decide what fits their criteria. I'm just showing you some places. The next one is Mexico on the east side of Madeira, near the airport. And the last one is very similar to Prazeres, again, very flat, very green. It's good if you want to have like a farmhouse, plant trees and everything. So many choices in Madeira. Next. So the type of properties that you can buy on the island can be, for example, next, the bespoke properties. You can buy a plot with an approved project, or even buy the plot to build something. But you have to have in mind that this can take about 2 years at least, because you have to get planning permissions from the city hall, find a good builder, and it's not easy nowadays. The availability of the materials, so you have to consider all of that. Of course, you can personalize everything at your taste, but you have to consider that it will take a while. Next. There are properties that are already under construction. I'm giving you this example because it's a very nice property. I know the builder, and our clients, they bought from this builder before, and everyone is happy. This building is being built, for example, in Émigré Lda, where is the red square. All the units will have a nice view over the bay. So this is a nice option if you are not ready to pay the full amount, because this type of properties you can pay in stages. You give a deposit, and then the builder will ask for another down payments along the construction. And it's still possible to make some modifications depending at the stage that the building is. Next. There is also some existing properties. There is ones with modern lines, there is with the traditional style. So it's really up to each client. Each client is different, so we always have to respect their own taste. And after the client decides what to buy, we call a promissory agreement, that it's a contract that it's signed, that they're going to compromise on buying the property. And at this stage, it's necessary to give a deposit. And normally it's about 10%. And it's also at this moment that we have to establish the time limit for the deed to actually acquire the property and do the final payment. If you are cash buyers, it helps to negotiate much better the price, because sometimes the sellers, they are in a rush to sell. And if you are a cash buyer not needing a mortgage, can help to negotiate the price of the property. Next. Yeah, so we are here to act for the buyer and not to act for the seller. That's what normally the agents in Madeira do. So here we act for the buyer. So what we do, we ask the client to fill up a form, or we do a Zoom call with the client for them to explain what they are looking for on the property. We search the properties with one agent, and we try to find the ones that fits the criteria, and then show the client the best properties so they don't waste time on their visit to the island. Next. There is a lot of agents in Madeira, more than 1,000. So you don't really know who to work with. So that's also, again, why we're here. We choose one agent that will hear what you want and go through all the real estate agency. They will negotiate the commissions. We don't care. We just want to show the best product to the client. And we also show the properties that we think it's at a good price, not overpriced, and we also try to negotiate the prices. So it's good that you avoid going directly to state agents, because sometimes they just really want to sell their own fish. And sometimes they are not certified, so you can end up buying a problem. So this type of agents, we normally call them pirates. Next. When you choose the property, if it's a property that is existing already, we normally recommend you to make a survey, to make an inspection, to have an engineer to go there and make sure the property is fine. There is no infiltrations, there is no risk to fall some walls. So that's one thing we recommend, but it's up to the client to decide, of course. And last, that's our office. So we have an office in Funchal. Even after the client's buying with us, we can still help. We are here to hold the hand along the process. But even after, we have clients contacting us to help them to go and check on the property when they are not on the island. For example, I just called yesterday to help one of our clients to get an old fridge removed from the house. So any matter that you think we can help, we're here. We have an office, phone number, email. So we're happy to help. So now I'm gonna leave John to take the role.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to welcome the CEO of Émigré, John Mather, back to the webinar. And John, I know over the next few slides you're going to get into the detail and the practicalities of money, tax, life, relocation, pensions, etc. So perhaps you'd like to start off by introducing yourself and telling us about the fundamentals of Portugal.
Okay, yes, happy to do that. CEO sounds a little grand. I mean, there's only two of us in the business. It's a small business. We look after probably 3 or 4 people per month, right? Because if we didn't do that, we'd need to scale up, and we don't want to do that. It's a relatively small island. You know, there are something like 120,000 properties on the island. There's normally somewhere between 15,000 and 20,000 on the market at any one time. So Jesse's very good at ferreting out good bargains, because also quite a lot of people try and avoid using the agent because they charge 5% to the seller, and they don't want to pay that. So off market is quite a useful area that we found some bargains for clients with. But Jesse's dealt with the why you would do this. I mean, it's a life-changing event to move here. And I'd just like to deal with the how, because beyond Brexit, we have this limitation of 90 days out of every 180. So if you want to spend more, then we need to look at visas and the like. But first of all, let's look at the economics. You know, let's look at the cost of living. Next. If we look at the UK versus Portugal, consumer prices in the UK are 36% higher. Rents are 34% higher. Restaurant prices 70% higher. Groceries in the UK 28% higher. These were figures updated to the 7th of January this year on a large survey. And if you're in London comparing with the two capitals, London to Funchal, then in fact the differences are even more pronounced. So it's comforting to know that you can move with an income to Madeira and know that your living standards can go up, not down, because of the cost savings. Next. It's worthwhile actually looking at some objective plans on how much you need. There is an organization called the Pensions and Living Standards Association in England. They did a survey recently, and they found that 77% of the the population really had not much of a clue about budgeting themselves. Only 16% could really give a figure that they planned. 20% were confident in their plans, and 70% said it would be really helpful if they had a target to work on and some comparables. So here are some comparables from the Pensions and Living Standards Association. And what it shows is minimum retirement standards for a single person, 12,800 in England, 19,900 for a couple. And at the more comfortable luxury end of the market, 37,300 for a single individual, 54,000 for a couple. So let's have a look at the comfortable end, how the taxes would apply. And let's compare the UK with Portugal. In the UK, that 54,000 would finish up at just over £3,000 per month of net spendable money, 3,404, which is 3,948 euros. Although I noticed the euro tipped off a little bit better. It might be a couple of hundred better than that now. Taxed on the same income in Portugal, you finish up with 4,000 euros a month. 4,000. Now you can only tell how that sort of budget would fit in with your current living standards, but I know for a fact it's difficult to spend 3,000 euros a month here. It's difficult. Next slide. Let's just summarize that. I don't know how much your income, how far your income goes on 3,404, but the discretion, how much is discretionary income left? I do know that here in Madeira, 25% of my net income is available for saving or luxuries. To be saving in retirement is quite an advantage. That will help us deal with inflation in the future. Next. The other thing that happens, English life expectancy dropped last year. Now we know why. We have the pandemic. We have a number of other problems with the health service, not dealing with people who are sick, and people not being able to get appointments with doctors. But in reality, you hear the life expectancy is going up still. And you can realize if you've got these people at 65, there's a 50% chance of getting to 85 for a single male, 88 for a single woman, and 92 for a couple. That goes out to 25% chance of getting to 97, 94, 92. So this is not a short-term plan. You may well find you're spending as much time in retirement as you did at work. Next slide. So budgeting matters. So we have a cost advantage, we have a longevity advantage, and we have a hospital that actually can take note of you. 365 million euros of subsidy from Brussels building a teaching hospital here, which will be ready in about another 18 months. I think speaks volumes for how we're investing in infrastructure and services. Next. The popular routes to residence, the D7 visa. This is perfect for retirees, landlords, with income coming in, passive, what they call passive income coming into Madeira, into Portugal. Passive income generally amounts to dividends, rents coming in, pensions coming in from abroad. The D8 visa is for the techies and the younger ones. We have some younger ones in their 60s here who've got the nomad visa. And then that can be either as a temporary situation or in fact a long-term leading to a permanent residence and maybe even a passport. The golden visa has not stopped. It still exists, but they've taken domestic property out of the equation. So now with golden visas, we have a fund. Now this is suitable for somebody who can't come to Madeira or Portugal for a number of years, but are concerned that the rules might change and the visas may not be possible to have. So this way is a way of putting an investment in for 500,000 and securing your right to reside in Portugal. The D2 visa is less used, but it's for entrepreneurs in high-value jobs who wish to set up a business here. And that involves a little more detail of business plans need to be drawn up. And then we've got to work with the lawyers to get that negotiated through on a more individual basis. What we're aiming for, hopefully, is Portuguese citizenship after 5 years. To achieve that, you'll need to pass a test in Portuguese. And it's about, A2 is about the level of a 12-year-old. So not too onerous a deal. Next slide. Oh, sorry, yes. Well, obviously this is complicated. We need to be nursed all the way through this. Portugal is rather bureaucratic. So we'll nurse you all the way through the thing. Next. This is what's normally seen on the websites of various people. And frankly, it's oversimplistic. The D2 visa, it doesn't tell you how complicated it needs to get to have a proper business plan. That takes some time. The D7 visa gives some costs. It's tied to the minimum wage, the 820 a month. So you need around about 10,000 euros a month, a year, for a single applicant, 50% of that for a spouse, and I think it's 30%, 25% for a child who would be less than 23 after the 5 years. But it's oversimplistic. Let me just explain why. Next slide. We've got to have all of these items in place, all of them. Proof of accommodation for 12 months at least, your tax number, your bank account opened, this proof of accommodation, the health insurance you need to have, and a clean criminal record. Next slide. If going down even more into the detail, the D7 visa means that you're going to become very soon a Portuguese taxpayer. So if you can't commit to coming soon, this doesn't apply to you. People don't tell you that too much. And what that means is that you've got to spend 6 consecutive months in Portugal. If you break that 6 consecutive month period, then in fact you need to have 8 months in the year of time in Portugal. After 2 years, you reapply. There's a renewal date. They're checking up on you to make sure you still qualify. And then after 5 years, that's when you exchange your temporary residence for a more permanent one. I put this book up. I found this book very useful. Because it's such an active place, such a healthy diet and such great medical facilities, it is possible to separate longevity away from age. They're not the same thing. What you really want to do is have a long time in healthy retirement, not just longer. Next. The golden visa is therefore suitable for, let's say you're planning to retire in 4 or 5 years' time. Well, let's secure the situation on visas now and know that you're investing in the right place and that you have the right to actually come and live here eventually. It won't be frustrated by law changing when you thought you were going to be able to use the advantages the visas have been giving in the last few years. Those advantages are whittling away. It's not very popular with Brussels to have investment related residents. I noticed this week already the Australians have withdrawn all the investment visas, and that's happening quite a bit. It doesn't help that people like Malta, Cyprus, Greece have more or less been selling passports. That's not in the spirit of what this is all about. But the funds are a good route, and also it gives you some exposure to the euro, which is eventually where your economy is going to be based. Next. So we're aiming possibly for citizenship. The passport for Portugal is a very valuable one, is accepted by many countries, certainly as many as the British passport. It's 500,000 was the entry level. Technically, it would be possible to do 250,000, but that's into heritage preservation or, in fact, scientific research. Now, I've not come across a scientific research program, but that sounds like more than a donation than an investment. And that might, we want to get you your money back with hopefully a profit. So that might not be suitable for you, but we can investigate whatever purpose you have. Next. We've got our own checklists. There's 4-step process: the legal documentation, the tax numbers and the bank account, the fund subscription, and then the golden visa application itself. Quite a few of the other visas follow this same pattern, so I don't expect you to read all this detail slide. It's far too much detail. So let's go on to the next slide, which just simply summarizes it. Year 1, we do the onboarding process. Year 2, we renew. Year 5 to 7, we're liquidating the investment and we're applying for the passport. A really very simple process, but behind the scenes, lots of work going on. And this is why you need a good lawyer to help you with this, and maybe a good accountant as well. Next. We'd encourage you not to be that frog in warm water. Procrastination is the greatest enemy you have. Next. Repairing the UK troubled economy will take decades. Britain now has more debt than it had at the end of the Second World War, and it took 60 years to pay that off. There is no quick fix, no matter which party gets in at the coming election. The opportunity of living in Portugal is still available, but for how long? And if you believe that Portugal is part of your personal solution, then we should be dealing with our experience of keeping you out of trouble, minimizing risk, maximizing opportunity. And maybe even we can buy property here of a similar type to what you want in the UK. Cheaper, and downsizing on price, not necessarily on the quality of the property, can actually boost your retirement opportunities. So that's our speciality. We have fun with this business. It's more of a hobby business, but we've got some lovely clients. Most of our business now comes from recommendations, and it is truly international. We're getting more people now coming from America. Now there are direct flights from here. So next slide. There's the two of us, right? The big company, of which I'm chief executive.
Enormous team, about as big as the chamber team, isn't it, John?
It is. And Jessie has become very good at delegating up.
Delegating upwards to you. Well, I'm glad to hear it, John. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are getting some excellent questions in the chat box. And I have to say that our audience is so dedicated that we've had lots of questions in advance of today's webinar. So I am now going to ask John and Jessie some questions already posed by our visitors, and anybody that's got some new questions, please put them in the chat box or the Q&A box. We've already got a couple coming in, which we'll get to you. We'll get to your questions very shortly, Mr. Anonymous Attendee, but a very good question. We'll be back with you shortly. John, first question to you. Tell us a little bit about, you don't have a typical client because everyone's different, but who's a current client that you're working with? Tell us how you're working with them and what you're doing for them, just to give people a flavour of how it goes.
Well, we have a retired SRN, a nurse, who's moving out of England and retired. She needed some help with the pension to get that on a no tax code in the UK, because when you become resident abroad, the pension becomes what's called disregarded income in the UK. And it should actually not have a tax deducted at source. Otherwise, you've got all the problems of claiming that money back and you're not in the country. We helped there, particularly with the 3 cats that had to come, with the import of a car. And that client's just a delight to help. And then yesterday we hosted a lunch for her because there's another nurse here that we know, and we thought they'd get out like a house on fire. They're of a similar vintage.
Okay.
And it worked. We were totally unnecessary to be there. These two just chatted away like mad. So.
And did you, what sort of property did you find her, or did she not need you for that?
Oh, no, we found the property for her in here. She wanted something a little more rural. She bought near Prazeres. She bought a beautiful house that had been well renovated. Nothing to do with the place, maybe a lick of paint. That's all to do. And she's now found her language course. She's already on a language course. She hasn't been here a month yet, and she's already on a language course learning. Her neighbors keep on bringing fruit and stuff round, introducing themselves. So she's integrating very well with the local community there.
Well,
But she has tremendous energy for somebody who's a little younger than me. But
you mean she's 30? Okay. John, I'm going to put a question to you from one of our visitors who's just put it in the chat box. If I have obtained my golden visa and my residency to be able to get my citizenship, how many weeks per year do I have to reside in Portugal? If he's got his golden visa.
Well, it depends where he is on the 5-year journey, but essentially, to be safe, if you say two weeks a year, then you can't be wrong.
Yep.
There are some modifications to that, but just keep in your mind 2 weeks a year. So it's not an onerous thing to do to come back for that.
Okay,
but
that is because he's got a golden visa.
But if they've got the old golden visa, and if he did that before the 10th of October, then he should go back to who provided that for them and see if he can get onto the old non-habitual residence tax status, because otherwise that ceased at the end of December, and that's a very valuable tax concession there. So they could go back immediately to the people. If they have any problem with it, come back to us and we'll direct you to a lawyer that can sort that out for you.
And as our visitors can see, your full contact details are there. So any of our visitors can email either you or Jessie and have a chat after the webinar. Yeah. My next question is about the health aspects. Jessie, we were talking earlier about hospitals and healthcare, and one of our guests, Mr. Fox, is asking, how is day-to-day GP and dentist services in Funchal right now? Because they're not excellent in the UK right now because of pressure. How is it if you want to go to the dentist in Funchal right now, or go to your GP, Portuguese equivalent, general doctor?
Well, it depends if you have a health insurance, if you don't have, but in case you don't have a health insurance, you can just go directly to some dentist, and sometimes you can get an appointment for next day. We had one situation that there was some clients staying here for a week. The lady, she has a back hernia, and she was waiting for a long time to get her surgery back in the UK. So when they told us about the problem, I said, I can try to make an appointment for you here to see at what stage it is and how much would it be to get the surgery here. So the next day at 5 o'clock, I went to pick the lady from the hotel and she had the appointment. So it's very good. You can get appointments quite fast. There is the public service, there is the private. So, and having a health insurance, it's not very expensive. You can get one of the best insurances and it can be 150 euros per month. So that's not expensive.
And the big news
hernia, can I just say that hernia issue, the lady was offered an operation the next day.
Okay.
And but the cost was what, 1,200 euros, wasn't it? It's going to be 1,200 euros from memory.
Yes, yeah.
That's all. Okay. I had a dental situation where I broke a tooth. I was able to go into the local dentist, have an appointment same day. They have some emergency ones where they do it same day. They fixed it within the hour. So I had a very good experience with those. Same with the quality opticians.
And were you did you claim that on your private health insurance, John, or did you pay on the nose for it?
Well, if I'd paid the full price for it, I'd have paid 40 euros.
Right.
Well, I think I paid 12 euros and used the insurance.
Right. Okay. Next question, guys. I would like to ask John. One of our visitors emailed this question in earlier, and the question is, I'm interested to know about the renting before you buy option in Portugal, let's say in Madeira. And what sort of properties can you rent in Funchal right now, John? I mean, if you want to stay there for 3 months, 6 months, 8 months and see if you really like it, well, you couldn't stay more than 90 days actually as a British citizen, but 3 months would give you a flavour. Or let's say you had gone for your visa, your residency visa, and you needed to rent a place for a year to demonstrate that you could get your residency visa. What sort of things can you rent in Funchal? What sort of prices?
Well, we're experimenting a little bit at the moment because sometimes we find a client gets a little over enthusiastic, and I think if you rush at this important decision, you could make mistakes. So we would like them to spend longer. I mean, we've had people come and buy within 3 days. I mean, that's ridiculous, but that's happened. But they didn't regret it, fortunately. They rushed at it. So we'd rather they spent a good deal of time more. Now we've got a 2-bedroom apartment right in the centre, next to the Palace Hotel. Now that's about €100 a night. It's a 2-bedroom apartment, fully kitted out to a good standard, with car parking spaces. 100 a night covers it.
And that's in the middle of Funchal. Is that next to the Reed's Palace Hotel, up the hill?
Just next to the casino.
Oh no, right, lovely, right there in the middle of Funchal. Okay, so that gives you a flavour.
Walk to the centre.
Yeah, 5-minute walk to the centre.
Okay, we were talking earlier, Jessie, weren't we, about, let's say someone wants to rent a 3-bedroom house in the rural area outside Funchal. We were saying that those are in shorter supply, aren't they? Because houses like that tend to stay inside the families and be rented to families and friends. So most of the rental properties in Funchal or in the wider island would be apartments. Would that be a fair comment? Or
I would say so. There are still some houses as well, but most of them are on Airbnbs.
And
the
so they're
charges
short
can
term,
be quite high. Yeah.
And they tend to be quite small. I mean, we've had clients come across with friends as well, or family members. So to have a 2-bedroom place is better. And also, so they can actually check on what they're doing. They might want to talk to the children about moving abroad. We found the children are enthusiastic because they're going to get tickets rather than.
Oh yes, actually, one very important point for everyone to realise: if you do move to Madeira and live permanently as a resident in Madeira, you get subsidised flights to Portugal. A lot of people don't realise this, but as a resident in Funchal or resident in Madeira, whatever nationality you are, you pay, is it €86? What were you saying? 82.
After you get the residency card, that you actually become a resident in Portugal or in Madeira, you can benefit from a subsidy between the Madeira and the mainland. Doesn't matter if it's to Lisbon, Porto, the Algarve. You pay the full amount of the ticket till €400. And then when you return, you have to have the payment confirmation and the boarding passes to show into the post office, and they will reimburse the money. So you will only pay €86.
Exactly. So let's say you wanted to take a complicated flight to Thailand or something, and you couldn't fly from Funchal, Madeira's capital. You could hop to the mainland for €86 and then take a flight from or straight.
But it has to be booked separately. Like if the final destination was to the mainland, you cannot make as a stopover. Otherwise, it will not be.
Exactly. So you've got to get off the plane at Lisbon, and then later on, or taken, the next day, you get your plane to wherever it is you're going. But the point is that
it can be the same day, but just book separately.
So the point is that your connection to the mainland is subsidised, and you'll never pay more than €86 per flight from Madeira over to Portugal. Okay. Now, next question, John. I've got a question here from a couple of visitors to the site. How does the NHR work in Madeira now? Because everybody is aware how the NHR has changed. Now, just to clarify for our viewers, one thing is residency, that you reside permanently in Portugal for over 6 months a year, or you get a golden visa by using the investment route, and you don't have to live there permanently, but you're building up you get a residency permit. One thing is residency. The other is the tax you pay while in Portugal. And a lot of people know about the NHR, the non-habitual tax regime, which has been very advantageous for foreigners coming to live in Portugal. John, tell us about that, because there's been some drastic and radical changes to that, which the whole regime finished at the end of December, didn't it?
Broadly speaking, you missed it.
Yeah.
And it's no nice way of saying that, is there? I mean, it did start when I came out here in 2016. The dividends were tax exempt, the pension was tax exempt, and the maximum rate of tax was 20% here. So that was very useful. But it was only ever useful for a limited period. It's a bit of a boost for the move.
But it's for 10 years. It works for 10 years. It did. Anybody who got it before
They've still got
December
it.
the
They've still got it.
31st.
Their grandfathered it. They're honouring what you've done before.
Yeah.
And this is the same with the golden visa. They will honour the ability to become resident. It's against the constitution to have retrospective legislation. So that's helpful. There is a version of the non-habitual residence. We've not got enough experience because it was done when the government was dissolving itself and going to do a general election. So the details of that should be published on the 1st of February in what they call the Gazette here, rather like you have in England. And we'll have to see what that amounts to. But from what I've read so far, it really only applies to those who are starting a business here, or entrepreneurial or high value jobs. And I think it's only going to give them a 20% tax charge, maximum up to €250,000 a year of income.
Okay.
So we need to do more work on that with clients and get some experience and talk to the competent lawyers here to see what their interpretation of it is. But it's brand new, that stuff. There is talk of Madeira trying to make itself special and different to the mainland. We got away with that with the house buying. When they withdrew the house buying on the mainland, it didn't apply to Madeira. So I know
under the golden visa, you mean?
Under the golden visa.
Yeah.
So I know there's lots of lobbying going on at the moment to make it a little special. And the politicians are quite clever here of getting extras.
So currently, can you still buy a property on Madeira and qualify for the golden visa?
No, that's gone.
They've shut that loophole too.
That's gone.
Yeah, that's gone. Yeah. Okay. Oh yes, that's right. That went on until the end of last year, i.e. longer than you could do that on the mainland. But now that option's shut in Madeira as well.
But do have a look if you're partway through the process. If any of the people online today are in the process of doing their golden visa, if in fact they were going through that process prior to the 10th of October and can prove it, then in fact they should talk to whoever helped them with that and see if the NHR is still available to them. Until March, there is a little bit of a window there, but it's a bit specialist to spot somebody who's 90% there and just needs to be pushed over the line. We had 2 clients like that, and we've got those pushed over the line in time.
So they'd already got residency or had applied for residency.
They'd set the whole thing in motion. We'd done all the applications
for the residency, but they hadn't yet applied for the tax status.
That's
and
right.
You managed to get them through before the NHR tax deadline end of last year. Okay. Now we've got a very interesting question come in from Tim Covington. Tim, welcome. And Tim, I'm going to put this question to John. Tim is asking, what is the situation for UK state pensioners in terms of income tax if you are only on a 6-month visa to live in Portugal? I would like to try Madeira before I buy.
Well, you're tax resident where you spent 183 days or more is the general rule. So you may still be tax resident in the UK. So in that case, that pension would be taxable in the UK, but normally the state pension is less than the lower band of tax.
Yes, if Tim's just referring to a state pension. Yeah. When Tim refers to his 6-month visa, he means the extended tourist visa in Portugal, does he?
Yes, but that's not necessarily tax residence.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a nasty piece of legislation in the UK called let me remember what it's called. Temporarily non-resident. And what happens there, if you go back within 5 years, the Inland Revenue is capable of saying, well, you didn't really leave, and we're going to retrospectively tax you as if you'd never left. So you've got to be very careful on some of these things. And that's why, you know, following up with the client is important, to know what what's happening with them.
Okay. Tim is also asking, actually, a very good question. Tim is a yacht broker. And as we know, the International Shipping Register in Madeira is a huge area of business for Madeira. Lots of international ships sail under the Madeira flag because it comes under the Madeiran tax-free zone, doesn't it? And there are various tax benefits. Have you got any advice for Tim in terms of continuing his yacht broking business in Madeira? Because he says he would like to do that.
Well, that's an international business, isn't it? And you can almost do that from anywhere. They're rebuilding the whole of the marina at the moment, which is rather nice. They're changing that infrastructure there. The tax on yacht brokerage and shipping. Funny enough, the economist that worked with me on a hedge fund when I was director of a hedge fund in London, he advises the Greek Ship Owners Association. So if you'd like to write to me and tell me, I'll make an introduction. You can ask somebody who knows what they're talking about, rather than me guessing.
Tim, you should also talk to the Madeira tax-free. What's it called? Madeira tax-free zone. Jessie, what's the official title of the Madeira tax-free zone, run by SDM? Madeira International Business Centre, MIBC. Tim, if you Google the Madeira International Business Centre, you'll come up with a whole website which talks about the tax-free zone inside Madeira, where they run various businesses which attract very little corporation tax. But the yacht shipping, or the shipping register, is also a big part of that. And second to that, John, we were discussing the special tax benefits. The Madeira tax-free zone, the Madeira International Business Centre in Madeira, has been designated a special zone in Madeira in order to activate and encourage more business into Madeira. And it's been very successful at attracting international companies into Madeira because it charges much lower corporation tax. One of our visitors to the webinar today is asking, how is dividend income taxed on listed companies in Madeira? John, I don't know if that's a question you know the answer, or we should send that off to our...
If it's UK listed companies, then they normally come with a dividend with a tax charge, and you can't normally get that removed. But they, like pensions, they come under the disregarded income category. So you can claim the tax back and then account for the tax on the dividend here when you're a resident here. That's how you do that.
And if it was a listed company, I think Tam was going to move back to the slide. If it was a company, I suppose a listed company in Madeira doesn't make sense. Yes, I think Tim or our anonymous attendee must be referring to dividend income taxed on listed companies in the UK. Exactly.
Well, there is an interesting thing with dividends, because when you move here, let's suppose you've got a private pension, and your living expenses are now all denominated in euros. You might want to limit your exposure to currency risk by buying a portfolio of, say, German shares. And German shares and French shares tend to actually give better dividends than UK shares. And if you look at the FTSE 100, it's tracked sideways since the turn of the century. I think it was about 6.8 in 2000, and now it's what, 7.4 or something. That's hardly growth, and the dividend yield is pretty poor. So again, I'd look at trying to tie your economy and your income together, so you don't have the risk of currency. I remember the pound was at 134 just prior to Brexit. And now it's 116, nearly 117 today.
Yes. One of our visitors is asking, how long do we have to become to benefit from the NHR, i.e. the tax benefits that accrue if you're resident in Portugal, before this goes away as well? I'm afraid to tell you that the NHR benefits have already shut in Portugal, unless, as John was saying earlier, you qualify under the NHR2, which is being defined by the government as we speak, which is going to allow you to pay 20% tax only on your income while residing in Portugal, but only if you're in a couple of very specialist areas in terms of work. So it won't benefit pensioners and it won't benefit normal workers, should we say, but that is still being defined within the government as we speak. And there are Portuguese elections on the 10th of March. So currently the Portuguese government is not sitting anyway, because they're in electioneering mode.
Yeah.
Right, one last question, ladies and gentlemen, because we've overrun, but I'm delighted to say almost all of you are still with us, so we're obviously not boring you rigid. We have a question from a viewer to John or Jesse. What fees do you charge for your services? Which seems to be a very good question to ask.
Very simple, very simple. We charge 1% of the purchase price of the property, because everybody buys more or less everybody buys a property. Why 1%? Well, I don't think anybody's going to be dumb enough to undercut us. But secondly, it's easy for us to demonstrate value, because we typically save a client between 2 and 5 times what we cost them. And that's the way we try and make sure that we're delivering value. Nobody can guess what they're going to pay for a house within 1% anyway. And it does incentivize us to try and make sure we get a discount on the purchase price when we're negotiating. And you should really employ a buyer's agent. You should never ever be having the seller's agent, whose job it is to get the maximum price for the seller, actually taking advice from them. No matter if they're not objective, and they're dealing with the sale. That's their job. It's not to give you a bargain. Now, we've come across some horror stories. We had somebody inquire last week who'd already decided to buy at 1.2 million. Well, if they'd come to us earlier, we could have told them that particular property was on the market a month earlier at 800,000. So you can make some horrible mistakes, and it's worth doing the job properly, doing the proper research. My job in wealth management was actually putting property deals together for large pension funds. That was my main business. So I've done over 700 property transactions in my life, and I used to own 6 real estate offices in England. So I love property, and I know how to negotiate. And you make your profit on the property when you buy, not when you sell. So.
Fair enough. Well, I think on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we have overrun, but I hope that all of you have learned something today, and that you will feel free to contact John or Jesse at the contacts below if you'd like to talk to them or ask any further questions. I think we've all learned quite a lot about Madeira and moving to Portugal today. I certainly have. And if any of you would like to come and see us in person, come along to the Moving to Portugal shows and seminars in central London on the 14th of March. Register now. You just go to movingtoportugal.org.uk, come and see us. And I'd like to simply say a very heartfelt thank you to John Mather and Jesse Serão from Émigré EU in lovely Funchal in Madeira. And I'm hoping very much that we will see all of you again very soon at our next webinar. We will keep you in touch with that, and come and see us at Moving to Portugal in London on the 14th of March. Thank you very much indeed. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Christina.
Bye.
Thank you.